man. As in, man. Then get pregnant, then be forced to keep the baby lest your entire family gets sued by a stranger. Yes, Texas passed its draconian anti-abortion law this month. Just a taco of a law. That doesn't even have half a dollar bill in it. And while you've probably seen several think pieces, Twitter threads, TikTok dance videos, Fidge Flork clipimations, Scrooble-Dink mash pods, and peekaboo blam cams decrying the law's unprecedentedly extreme measures by this point, you still might be honking to yourself, well, it can't be that bad, can it? I assure you, it can. And it is. It's really bad. Sitting down to read this thing is like finding your parents' autopsy photos tucked into the seat back pocket of the chair in front of you as you bend over to cover your head while the plane you're taking to your federal arraignment nosedives into Lake Ontario, the shittiest Great Lake. You're not even going to die in an ocean, just gonna float there in the wreckage with a bunch of stupid turtles or whatever the hell lives in Lake Ontario. We don't know. Science doesn't know because it's not worth the time or money to investigate. Not even Elon Musk would send a leaky metal tube he drew on the back of a Wendy's napkin to rescue kids trapped in a cave in Lake Ontario. He might not even bother to call any of the rescue divers pedophiles, if they even deigned to show up anyway. I mean, it's Lake Ontario. What are you supposed to do with that? Drink it? Nope. No dice, Great Lake. Piece of fucking shit lake. Anyway, reading Texas's new abortion law is a lot like whatever I just said. The new law, which bans abortions performed more than 6 weeks after the patient's last menstrual cycle, is so blatantly, maliciously horrible that the words try to delete themselves from your memory like disappearing ink as you're reading them. But how can that be? You and anyone else who has ever read literally anything about women's reproductive rights are understandably asking, because that's a really good question, genuinely. How can that be when abortion is a constitutionally protected right? See? Even the monkey we trapped to write our bumper text wants to know. First of all, the law doesn't target people who receive abortions directly. That would be a little too obvious, like using a banana to catch a monkey that learned how to write. No, instead of targeting anyone who gets an abortion, the law focuses on anyone who assists in an abortion, whether it be the doctor who performed it, friends or relatives who helped pay for it, or even the bus driver who carried you to the clinic. But don't worry, Uber and Lyft have already announced that they will cover the legal fees of any of their drivers who get sued because of the law, which is definitely a new policy on their respective books and not just performative cod swallop they never actually intend to make good on, considering both companies' long history of trying as hard as they can to not pay their drivers any benefits or do anything to prevent them from sexually assaulting their passengers. But even then, the Texas Highway Patrol can't just go around rounding up all the cab drivers and abortion doctors, because that would be blatantly unconstitutional. Texas lawmakers need the abortion ban to be winkingly unconstitutional, so their buddies in the Supreme Court can pretend that it isn't. In a move that's so dumb it's almost clever, the law doesn't actually grant the government or any state officials the authority to enforce it. What the law does instead is put the onus of enforcement entirely on private citizens, empowering them to enforce the ban with spurious lawsuits. Legal experts consulted by the Texas Tribune claim that the function of pushing enforcement off onto private citizens is to prevent the law from being challenged as unconstitutional. Because, as you may remember, abortion is a right guaranteed by the Supreme Court. That pesky Roe v. Wade ruling guarantees that everyone in America has the right to get an abortion if they so choose. So, in order to avoid getting challenged as unconstitutional, Texas's law effectively deputizes citizens to enforce the abortion ban by giving them carte blanche to sue the pants off of anyone who either performs an abortion or assists in the procedure. It's basically throwing an ostrich into a shark tank and denying any responsibility for what happens next. It's basically exactly like that. This tactical phrasing has already proven to be effective, as the Supreme Court ruled against an emergency request to block the law, citing that because no state officials or employees are able to enforce it, it technically doesn't violate the Constitution. The Supreme Court, as you may recall, is both the highest court in the land and a group of impossibly wealthy lawyers whose membership is 22% alleged sex creep. I'm not saying they don't necessarily have the best interest of people seeking abortions in mind, but two of the justices who decided against labeling Texas's new law unconstitutional ascended to the Supreme Court by publicly humiliating women who made credible allegations of sexual assault and misconduct. It's kind of a fun game, actually. You look at a picture of the Supreme Court and try to guess which ones are the trash ones. The fact that no state officials can enforce the ban hardly matters, because the law extends its sweeping powers to any person other than an officer or employee of a state or local governmental entity in this state. That means total strangers who have not been harmed in any way themselves are free to sue literally anyone who even dares to perform or assist with an abortion, regardless of whether they have any connection to the person receiving the abortion or have even met them before. Now, normally, a plaintiff needs to have some connection to a case to sue for damages, which is a legal concept called standing, as in, you need to have legal standing to sue your neighbor for throwing your ostrich into a shark tank. The Texas law effectively removes that barrier, meaning you don't even have to know the ostrich's name or even live on the same street as the shark tank. Plaintiffs under the new law don't even have to provide any evidence that an abortion took place. Remember, there's no burden of proof required to file a civil suit. All you have to do is fill out some paperwork and pay a filing fee. But not that it should matter, because as I mentioned earlier, abortions are legal in America. They are not against the law. You can breakdance in front of a police station, swinging dummy fetuses around like a baton twirler, singing ABORTION to the tune of Respect, and they can't do shit. They have to sit there and enjoy your performance art. And you really can do that. If you say the A and the B kind of fast, it totally works. What the Texas law effectively does is deputize the state's entire citizenry to do their unconstitutional dirty work for them. And it's not an unconstitutional ban if you don't call it that and have freak vigilantes on Nextdoor enforce it for you. Apparently. So why would anyone want to stick their noses into other people's extremely private, personal medical business like this? I'm glad you asked, and I'm glad that I heard you ask. The thing is, people love to do that. They do it all the time. Social media has thrived in the past 2 decades specifically because of how much people desperately want to destroy anyone who says or does anything they don't like, regardless of whether it's against the law or even affects them in any way. Much of the reporting around the new law has been focused on the $10,000 reward the state is offering to anyone who files a lawsuit and wins, in addition to covering their court costs and attorney fees. But the fact is, you hardly needed to dangle $10,000 in front of the same people who share pro-life Minions memes to encourage them to use the sue everyone in the state of Texas card you just gave them. That's the other thing. $10,000 is just the starting figure. The law states that any plaintiffs who successfully win a judgment will be awarded no less than 10 grand. 10 grand is the jumping off point. 10 grand is where negotiations begin. That's the legislative equivalent of throwing a party that starts at 6 o'clock and ends at question mark. And as we know from decades of mandatory minimum sentencing practices, there's definitely no room for this open-ended chest of pirates' booty to be exploited. Surely not. One might argue that it is specifically designed to attract people who normally wouldn't dream of participating in a police state surveillance program designed to subjugate pregnant people as brood sow, but out of desperation find the promise of a $10,000 payday too life-changing to ignore. I'm glad we're earmarking all that money as cash rewards for enforcing a blatantly unconstitutional ban instead of using it to provide literally any kind of support for the millions of people living in poverty in this country during an historic pandemic. You know, helping the needy and all that other stuff people who legislate against abortion in the name of religion claim to care about. But here, as they say, we are. What's that word again? Thanks, monkey! One day we'll get you a name. The Texas's snitch reward program also prevents any defendants being sued over an abortion from using the fact that abortions aren't illegal as a defense. To literally quote the law, the defendant's belief that the requirements of this subchapter are unconstitutional or were unconstitutional is not a defense. It's literally built in that you can't say the unconstitutional thing is, in fact, unconstitutional. Apparently, that's a thing you can just do, which kind of seems like it shouldn't be. Kind of seems like once something has been determined to be a federally protected right, you shouldn't be able to pass legislation that makes it illegal to point that out. Well, sure, women can drive, but anyone who sees a woman driving can sue the car dealership and the auto manufacturer for selling her that car. They don't even need to see her driving. They can just suspect she's driving, or if that's too much trouble, they can go ahead and accuse her of driving with no evidence at all. Now, before you get your constitutional britches all in a hitch, we're not saying she can't drive, or that a dealership can't sell her a car. We're just saying you're not allowed to mention any of those things when somebody sues you for it. That lawyer just won the case! The law piles on a number of additional factors to tip the balance further in favor of the rusty butt whistles deputized to file all the lawsuits, or as the law refers to them, plaintiffs. The plaintiffs can file suit in any county, even if the abortion took place on the other end of the state, and the defendants are not allowed to request a change of venue unless the plaintiffs also agree to it. Meaning, not only are you getting sued by some jabroni you've never seen before in your life for performing a medical procedure that, once again, is a right guaranteed by the Constitution, but you also have to drive to whatever courthouse in the state of Texas they filed their paperwork. And according to the law, you're not allowed to recoup any expenses or legal fees regardless of the judgment. The law also includes a stipulation leaving the door open for the state to levy additional fines against the defendant should they happen to violate the law again in the future. Obviously, the intended effect is to bury abortion providers under a mountain of frivolous lawsuits that carry the full support of the state legislature to financially annihilate them until they think twice about helping a vulnerable person exercise their constitutionally guaranteed right. That'll teach them. Yeah, that'll teach them. This law is just so blatantly malicious and gross to the point that even if you were pro-life, you should still find it to be a bad law that opens the doors to a flood of frivolous lawsuits. Something I sure thought Republicans didn't like.
You know, I have to say to Mr. Trump, you have been threatening frivolous lawsuits for your entire adult life. Even in the annals of frivolous lawsuits, this takes the cake.
Hey, Ted Cruz, do you remember when you made fun of Trump for filing frivolous lawsuits against you? How did that go for you? Ted and a lot of Texas Republicans have actually been pretty silent about this law, and that probably has to do with the fact that it's extremely hypocritical regarding how they're supposed to feel about frivolous legal proceedings. Not that these freaks care about hypocrisy or even pay a cost because of it, but they literally passed something called the Lawsuit Abuse Reduction Act in 2017. And suddenly they're like, super cool with it for this one thing. And that's weird. Is there a word for that? Or like... Ah, there it is. It's almost like they've completely lost their moral compass and don't actually believe in anything. You know, since the Texas law has created so many unprecedented loopholes that can be applied to so many other things and has essentially stabbed our justice system in the stomach. They are showing, with this law, that they would rather topple the entire sandcastle than share their toys, cluster their laws, rather than not get their way. And that's, wowee, a sure sign of a declining ideology if I ever saw one. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.